You might have heard that Indonesia is considering joining BRICS. Now, if you're unfamiliar, BRICS is an association of 5 emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So the big question on everyone's mind is this a good move for Indonesia or not? In the past few months, President Jokowi of Indonesia has hinted at the possibility of joining BRICS. The nation has extended an invitation, but as of now, the decision is still pending. And if you're wondering why this is such a big deal, well, joining an influential group like BRICS could have significant implications for Indonesia's economy, politics, and international relations. So let's dig in and see what's what. Okay, first off, what would Indonesia stand to gain from joining BRICS? Well, quite a lot actually. Economically speaking, BRICS countries together represent over 40% of the world population and around 23% of global GDP. That's massive. By joining this alliance, Indonesia would get an economic boost, tapping into new markets and increasing its bargaining power in global trade. Furthermore, BRICS nations also have their own development bank. This means that Indonesia could get easier access to loans for big development projects. Think about it. Better roads, improved public services, and maybe even that subway line people have been talking about for years. Another important aspect is the diplomatic angle. Being part of BRICS could enhance Indonesia's standing on the global stage. You see, this isn't just about economics. It's also about geopolitics. With a seat at the table, Indonesia could have a stronger voice in international matters, ranging from trade policies to climate change negotiations. Moreover, there's an aspect of currency exchange. BRICS nations have been pondering the idea of trading in their local currencies rather than the US dollar, reducing dependency on the American economy. If Indonesia joins this pact, it could significantly diminish its economic vulnerability to US monetary policy shifts, providing a sort of economic buffer. So as we can see, the economic advantages for Indonesia in joining BRICS could be manifold. It's not just a one-way street where Indonesia gains access to bigger markets. It's a multi-dimensional benefit that encompasses improved infrastructure, technology transfer, skill development, reduced currency risks, and stronger diplomatic ties. And with that comprehensive understanding of the economic benefits, we can now turn our focus to the potential downsides and political aspects Indonesia may face in aligning itself with BRICS. So you might be wondering, why does politics even matter in an economic alliance? Well, politics is the backbone of any international partnership. The members of BRICS have their own political leanings, objectives, and conflicts, both internationally and externally. Let's start with the notion of political alignment. Russia and China, 2 key members of BRICS, have often held positions counter to Western policies. Now, Indonesia traditionally has maintained a non-aligned stance, but it does enjoy a largely positive relationship with Western countries, including the United States. Joining an alliance with countries that often stand against Western ideologies could put Indonesia in a tricky spot diplomatically. Then there's the issue of human rights. BRICS countries have frequently been criticized for their human rights records. Indonesia, while not without its own issues, has been making strides in improving its human rights standing. But joining BRICS could place Indonesia under greater scrutiny and could lead to criticisms that might not have been directed its way otherwise. Another aspect to consider is the concept of collective decision-making. BRICS operates on the basis of equal footing among its members, and decisions are made through consensus. Indonesia will need to assess how well its political goals align with those of the other members. The challenge lies in balancing domestic political goals and the alliance's objectives. If there's a clash, Indonesia could find itself in complex diplomatic situations. Additionally, we need to talk about regional politics. ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, plays a significant role in Indonesia's foreign policy. Would joining BRICS affect Indonesia's commitments and obligations to ASEAN? There's a possibility that its focus could shift, impacting regional stability, or even causing friction with its closest neighbors. And lastly, let's not forget about sovereignty. Whenever there is a coalition, there's also the sharing of resources and information. How much is Indonesia willing to share, and at what cost? For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative has led to a deepening economic involvement in the internal affairs of some nations, causing concerns about sovereignty. Indonesia will have to tread carefully to ensure that it doesn't compromise its own interests while being a part of a larger alliance. By now, we've discussed the economic and political aspects of Indonesia potentially joining BRICS. But let's shift our attention to something closer to home. How would this move affect everyday Indonesians? Firstly, we must talk about job opportunities. As trade and investments between BRICS countries and Indonesia would likely surge, it could create an array of new jobs in various sectors. From manufacturing to IT to healthcare, the increased foreign investment could be a boon for the local job market. However, it's crucial to remember that not all job opportunities are created equal. The quality of these jobs, in terms of wages and working conditions, could vary significantly depending on the sector and the foreign partner involved. Next, there's education. Collaboration among BRICS countries in higher education and research is already strong. If Indonesia joins the alliance, Indonesian students might have better access to scholarships, research grants, and exchange programs in countries like Russia and China. However, the focus could drift towards science and technology fields, possibly neglecting other crucial areas like humanities and social sciences. Let's also consider culture. Indonesia has a rich and diverse cultural landscape, and its soft power is significant in international relations. As a member of BRICS, Indonesia's culture could get more exposure on the global stage. But there's a catch. Cultural exchange is a two-way street, and increased influence from BRICS nations could bring about subtle changes in Indonesia's own cultural fabric. And while global cultural exchanges are generally enriching, they could also fuel concerns about cultural erosion. Additionally, we should also touch on social equality. BRICS countries have varying degrees of income inequality and social disparity. Increased economic activity often comes with a widening gap between the rich and the poor. Indonesia will have to consider how joining BRICS could impact its own social inequality and what measures can be taken to mitigate those effects. And lastly, probably one of the most crucial aspects to consider, public opinion. As much as decisions about joining international alliances are made by governments and bureaucrats, public sentiment can't be ignored. Will the Indonesian public support such a move? Will they see it as a step forward, or will there be concerns about aligning too closely with countries that might not share Indonesia's values and principles? After all, public sentiment will play a crucial role in determining whether the decision is considered a success or a failure in the long run. So far, the Indonesian government is treading carefully. President Jokowi stated that the country is still mulling over the membership offer. The Trade Ministry also expressed interest but hasn't made a formal commitment yet. It's not a decision that can be rushed, and the government is looking at it from multiple angles, weighing the benefits against the potential drawbacks. This careful approach shows the gravity of the situation and how much is at stake for Indonesia. At this point, we've dived deep into the economic, political, and societal implications within Indonesia. But what happens on a broader international scale? For starters, if Indonesia joins BRICS, it's going to shake up the geopolitical balance. The original BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are already a force to be reckoned with. Adding Indonesia, a country with the world's fourth largest population and one of the biggest economies in Southeast Asia, would significantly bolster the group's influence. Now let's talk about ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Indonesia is a key player in ASEAN, and its decision to join BRICS might create a ripple effect within the organization. On one hand, it could offer ASEAN an indirect channel to engage more closely with BRICS countries. But on the other hand, it could create divisions within ASEAN if other members view Indonesia's move as drifting away from the organization's goals and principles. The US and Western Europe will also be keenly watching. Indonesia has had long-standing relationships with Western countries, especially the United States. Joining BRICS could create a new dynamic in these relations. While it's unlikely to cause a complete shift, it could lead to some level of realignment, particularly in areas like trade policies and military cooperation. And China is another interesting angle. The country is already a significant investor in Indonesia. With Indonesia's inclusion in BRICS, the Sino-Indonesian relationship could deepen even further. However, this could also make other countries within BRICS, like India, uncomfortable, given their own complex relations with China. Essentially, Indonesia could find itself having to navigate the intricacies of internal relations among BRICS nations. So, what's likely to happen next? It's tough to say, but the general expectation is that Indonesia won't rush into a decision. Given its strategic importance in Southeast Asia and its historical non-alignment policy, the country will have to think long and hard before making such a critical move. But anyway, do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.